Kevin Stefanski's leadership has entered a free fall. The viral video of his tense practice exchange with Shedeur Sanders wasn't just embarrassing. It confirmed that control is slipping. Sanders pointed questions about his progression and the team's offensive stagnation received evasive responses, highlighting a coach more concerned with optics than answers. In a moment that demanded transparency, Stefanski chose posturing.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
The fallout has been immediate. Players talking, fans questioning, and internal faith deteriorating. This isn't just about a quarterback, it's about a leader unable to lead under pressure. And KS. That scene at practice wasn't just emotional, it was pivotal. It signaled that the locker room may no longer be buying what Stefanski is selling. And when a player like Sanders, still officially a backup, commands the moment with more composure than the coach, it's a sign that the real authority might already be shifting. The Cleveland Browns are 2-7, the offense is collapsing, the locker room is restless, and the quarterback who could shift the momentum? Silenced. Now that leaked footage of Shedeur Sanders confronting head coach Kevin Stefanski has gone viral, the organization's strategy of erasure is exposed for what it is: a deliberate campaign to control the narrative, suppress talent, and protect fragile internal politics. This wasn't an isolated clash. This was the breaking point in a pattern that started long before a single word was exchanged at that practice. In the video, Shedeur questions the offensive strategy and asks where he stands in the team's development plans. His tone isn't confrontational, it's focused, clear. He's seeking answers about his role, about what's being done with his talent, and how he's expected to improve if he's kept on the sideline indefinitely. Stefanski, instead of leading with transparency, dodges, avoids. He won't give a straight answer. He won't even acknowledge the core issue. And that silence? It confirms what many suspected. This organization never intended to give Shedeur a fair shot. From the moment Shedeur told the media he felt ready to play, the team shifted. Confidence was met with suppression. That single interview triggered a full-blown containment strategy. Limit his media visibility, assign PR reps to monitor him, and make sure his name doesn't come up in press briefings. That's not about development. That's about silencing. And all of it happened while Dillon Gabriel, statistically underperforming, visibly struggling, remained untouchable. Gabriel's connection to Stefanski through prior coaching circles and shared representation isn't just a bad look, it's a red flag. A conflict of interest that goes unchecked while a young quarterback with potential is left in limbo. And the results speak for themselves. The team can't score. The offense is disjointed. The losing continues. Yet somehow the starter stays the same. The only thing more transparent than Gabriel's lack of production is the team's refusal to even acknowledge that Shedeur exists. Stefanski hasn't mentioned him publicly. The Browns media team has scrubbed him from internal narratives. Even in reporters say his name and are met with vague, clipped responses. It's not incompetence, it's strategy. The Browns aren't mishandling Shedeur out of confusion. They're doing it on purpose. Shedeur. Why? Because his presence disrupts the status quo. His confidence, his public platform, his last name, it's all a threat to a structure that values silence and submission over potential and performance. And this isn't new. Shedeur has been dealing with it since college. Despite his production, the NFL passed on him over and over. Why? Because of perception. Because of his father. Because teams saw the Sanders name and projected politics, not ability. He wasn't evaluated the same way as others in his class. And now, even on a pro roster, that same bias is shaping his trajectory. The NFL says it wants leaders, competitors, students of the game. Shedeur is all three. But when a young black quarterback comes in with self-assurance and a high-profile last name, the rules suddenly change. And now, because of this leaked video, the Browns can't pretend anymore. They can't act like Shedeur's silence was his choice. They can't blame development timelines or competitive depth charts. The world saw him speak up respectfully and directly. The world saw Stefanski brush him off. And the world sees what's really going on. The Browns are scared of what Shedeur represents. Because if he gets on the field and succeeds, it doesn't just reflect on him, it exposes them. It shows they wasted a half season protecting the wrong quarterback. It shows they failed to lead. It shows their entire handling of this roster was shaped by relationships, not results. And that's exactly what they don't want. So they chose suppression. And now, it's backfiring. Teammates see it. The locker room knows who's putting in work. They know when someone is being iced out for reasons that have nothing to do with football. And that's where the damage goes deeper than the stat sheet. Once players stop believing that the best man gets the job, you lose the team. That's already starting to happen in Cleveland. Every week Shedeur stands on the sideline, helmet on, prepared to play, and yet ignored. It chips away at the culture. Every week Gabriel underdelivers and still starts. It tells players that politics matter more than production. Every time Stefanski avoids Shedeur's name, it makes the lie harder to sell. And Shedeur? He hasn't cracked. He stayed focused, professional, composed. Even in the footage, he doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't get personal. He asks the same thing any player would ask after watching his team fall apart week after week while he's kept in the shadows. What exactly are we doing here? And now the question isn't just his. It belongs to the fans, to the media, to every person watching this unfold. What are the Browns doing? What is this franchise prioritizing when it buries a potential leader while protecting a quarterback who hasn't produced? How much longer can they operate like the footage didn't happen? Because the truth is, Shedeur doesn't need Cleveland. If this team won't recognize his value, someone else will. There are organizations who would welcome his leadership, who would embrace his confidence, who wouldn't view his name, his father, or his self-belief as threats, but assets. And if he leaves, if this leaked footage ends up being the beginning of the end, Cleveland won't just lose a player. They'll lose the locker room, the fan base, and any shred of credibility they've managed to hold onto this season. Because the minute Shedeur suits up elsewhere, and succeeds, which he will, every decision this franchise made to suppress him will be dissected under a national spotlight. And there won't be a single good answer. They didn't just fail to develop him. They tried to silence him. And now he's louder than ever. Let us know where you think this goes. Does Shedeur push for a trade? Or does he force the Browns to own their mistakes and finally give him the role he earned? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Like if you're done watching teams bury talent behind politics, and subscribe. We're going to be following every move in this story because it's only getting more explosive from here. This is no longer about whether Shedeur Sanders is ready to play. That question was answered the moment he walked up to Kevin Stefanski during practice and asked, calmly and directly, why the offense is being run the way it is, and what the plan is for his development. That moment wasn't theatrical. It wasn't unprofessional. It was a quarterback, fully in control of himself, calling out a broken process. On camera. And it exposed everything the Cleveland Browns have been trying to keep under wraps. What the world saw was just a few seconds of footage. But for those who've been paying attention, it was a confirmation of months, years, of systemic suppression. The Browns didn't just sideline a young quarterback. They buried him. They watched Shedeur show up early, work harder than most, stay poised, stay focused, and they chose to erase him from the conversation. Not because he wasn't ready, but because his confidence, his last name, and his refusal to shrink made them uncomfortable. It's not a football decision when a team goes out of its way to suppress someone's visibility. When PR is told to follow him around. When internal media is instructed not to highlight him. When the head coach avoids his name like it's a scandal. That's not development. That's silencing. And everyone knows it now. The footage didn't just leak, it detonated. You can't unsee it. You can't spin it. And you definitely can't pretend Shedeur is some inexperienced backup who doesn't understand the game. Because in that confrontation he spoke with the authority of someone who knows he's being treated unfairly, and is done pretending otherwise. The Browns wanted to keep him quiet. But now the entire league is talking. They were hoping the silence would keep the questions away. That the more they ignored Shedeur, the more the outside world would too. Instead, the silence made people suspicious. The team's refusal to give direct answers only made the whispers louder. And when the video surfaced, it confirmed the worst. This wasn't about development. This was about protecting someone else. Let's talk about Dillon Gabriel. Because this is where things stop being murky and start being clear. Gabriel has been the Browns starter all season. He hasn't produced. The team is 2-7. The offense is predictable. The passing game is stale. And the decision-making? Regressive. There's no spark. No creativity. No growth. And yet, week after week, Gabriel starts. What? Connections. Gabriel has ties to Stefanski's former college coaching circles. They share the same agent. And that alone should be a red flag. But instead of recusing himself or opening up the quarterback room for actual competition, Stefanski has doubled down on the wrong guy. And it's become painfully obvious. At this point, it's not even about talent versus talent. It's about principle. It's about the message being sent inside the locker room, where players see the injustice and are told to shut up and deal with it. It's about the coaches, the executives, the PR team, all working together to manage perception rather than fix the actual problem. The Browns didn't just choose the wrong quarterback. They chose silence. And now they're choking on it. Because the reality is, Shedeur's presence alone has forced them to reveal who they really are. A franchise so deeply afraid of disruption that they'd rather lose games than admit their decisions are personal, not professional. And Shedeur? He's done playing along. The fact that he hasn't gone public, hasn't called out the team by name, hasn't he aired his grievances in the media, that's not weakness. That's professionalism. And it's more than Stefanski and this staff have shown him in return. Because when a player is being monitored by PR, when their name is being actively avoided, when questions about their role are dodged in every... That's not an accident. That's an organizational decision. And that decision reflects fear. Fear that he'll succeed. Fear that the truth will come out. Fear that the team will have to explain why a young quarterback with poise, maturity, and skill was deliberately pushed aside while a struggling starter continued to be protected. Now they do have to explain. To the fans. To the media. To the players. And most of all, to Shedeur. Because the question isn't whether he deserves a shot. It's whether Cleveland even deserves him. He's not just a quarterback. He's a mirror. And what he's exposed is a franchise terrified of change. And let's not pretend Shedeur doesn't have options. He's not stuck in Cleveland. He's not locked into this mess forever. If the team won't change, he can leave. And when he does, there will be interest. He has the tape. He has the temperament. He has the respect of teammates who've seen how he handles himself in chaos. And now he has the sympathy of fans who are watching the Browns unravel. Not because they're losing games, but because they're wasting opportunity. If Shedeur asks for a trade, it won't be out of frustration. It'll be because staying would mean co-signing this system. Staying would mean sitting quietly while less qualified players are prioritized. Staying would mean continuing to work for an organization that's gone out of its way to pretend he doesn't exist. And what player in their right mind would choose that? He has more leverage now than ever before. And he didn't gain it through drama or diva behavior. He earned it the hard way, by staying silent until the silence became betrayal. And the Browns? They did this to themselves. They thought they could control the story. They thought they could sideline him, bury his name, and no one would notice. But the moment the video leaked, the illusion shattered. And now they're stuck. Because if they finally let him play, they're admitting they were wrong. They're validating the criticism. They're conceding that the best player wasn't the one they chose. And if they don't let him play, they're proving everything the footage already made clear, that they're not interested in winning, just in being right. Either way, they lose. Because Shedeur's already won something bigger than a roster spot. He's exposed the hypocrisy. He's survived the silence. And now he owns the narrative. So where does it go from here? That depends on Cleveland. But time's running out. Every game they lose, every drive Gabriel botches, everywhere Stefanski deflects, it all adds fuel to the fire. And eventually the Browns are going to have to choose, the truth or the illusion. Shedeur? He already made his choice. He spoke up. He stood firm. And he let the world see the cost of doing everything right in a system designed to punish players like him for being visible, vocal, and unafraid. In chaos, the Browns can't hide behind silence anymore, not when the league, the media, and their own locker room have seen behind the curtain. The confrontation between Shedeur Sanders and Kevin Stefanski wasn't just a slip-up during practice. It was a full-on unraveling of the Browns' internal politics, caught in real time, and now immortalized in viral footage that doesn't need commentary. It speaks volumes on its own. Let's break this down for what it really is. A young quarterback asked to be patient, asked to be quiet, asked to wait, finally drew the line. And he did it with composure. No screaming, no theatrics. Just straight, professional questions. Questions any player would ask in a failing system. He wanted clarity on his development. He wanted to understand the offensive strategy. He wanted transparency. That's leadership. But in Cleveland, leadership, at least when it comes from Shedeur, isn't rewarded. It's punished. The fact that Stefanski responded defensively, avoiding direct answers and brushing past legitimate concerns, speaks to a broader culture problem. The Browns didn't prepare for this. They didn't expect Shedeur to demand accountability in a way that couldn't be spun or edited or buried under talking points. They thought they could freeze him out until the season ended and deal with it in the off-season. But now? The clock is ticking loudly. The team is spiraling. Dillon Gabriel, the presumed safe starter, has not delivered. The Browns are at 2-7 with no momentum, no spark and no plan. And while the coaching staff clings to the narrative of developing talent, it's hard to sell that story when the talent is standing there, helmet on, ready to go week after week. There's no objective football reason to keep Shedeur benched at this point. The data's not there. The on-field performance isn't there. The locker room energy isn't there. So when people ask, why isn't he playing? The only answer left is the uncomfortable one: bias, favoritism, and fear of disruption. Let's talk about the favoritism. Gabriel's ties to Stefanski's past coaching circles aren't just casual. These are relationships built over time, supported by mutual agents, and deeply embedded in decision-making. This isn't conjecture. It's a clear conflict of interest. Gabriel has been protected beyond reason, and it's not just hurting the team, it's insulting the process. When a quarterback performs below standard and still starts, while another, who's shown nothing but poise, professionalism, and readiness, gets buried, what message does that send? Not just to the fans but to the locker room? It says, we don't value merit. We don't reward preparation. We reward who we're comfortable with. And that's poison to a football team. There are guys in that locker room who know what Shedeur brings to the table. They've seen him run drills, seen his football IQ, watched him lead. They've also seen him get iced out, watched the coaching staff dodge his name in meetings, watched PR reps shadow him like he's a liability instead of a leader. You can't unsee that. Interview, the erosion of trust is already happening. When players realize that performance doesn't dictate opportunity, morale breaks down. And when a team's morale is fractured, the losses pile up. Which is exactly what's happening now. And what makes this worse, what makes this sting for fans who want to believe in the franchise, is that Shedeur's done everything right. He hasn't lashed out. He hasn't gone on social media to trash the team. He hasn't leaked stories or thrown teammates under the bus. Even in the viral footage, he's calm, firm, asking for clarity, not concessions. That is maturity. That is leadership. That is exactly the kind of presence you want in a quarterback. Unless, of course, you're terrified of change. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. The Browns do know what happens if Shedeur plays. They know what it would mean if he gets in and immediately outperforms Gabriel. It would validate every question they've tried to silence. It would expose every bad decision they've doubled down on. It would force them to admit that the plan they've been selling, about development timelines and trusting the system, was built on protecting the wrong people. That's the fear. Not that Shedeur will fail, but that he'll succeed. And once he does, there's no putting that genie back in the bottle. No walking back months of denial. No pretending he wasn't ready. Because he is ready. He's been ready. The Browns just weren't. And now they've backed themselves into a corner. If they play him now, it's an admission that they were wrong. And if they don't, they risk losing the locker room, the fan base, and the quarterback they tried so hard to suppress. So where does that leave Shedeur? Right now he has all the leverage. Whether he stays or goes, the spotlight is his. He's shown poise under pressure. He's maintained professionalism in the face of blatant favoritism. And most importantly, he's exposed a system that doesn't like being questioned. The irony is that the very traits they tried to silence, his confidence, his leadership, his refusal to play small, are the reasons he's in demand. If Shedeur pushes for a trade, he won't be leaving in disgrace. He'll be walking away from dysfunction. And there are teams, smart, strategic, quarterback-hungry teams, that will take him seriously. Not just because of his name, but because of his response to adversity. Shedeur, there's power in that. And let's be clear, this isn't just a Cleveland Browns problem. This is a broader NFL issue. Shedeur's situation is tapping into something deeper. The way young black quarterbacks are treated when they step outside the mold. The league says it wants leadership, but when that leadership comes with a backbone and a public voice, it suddenly becomes difficult. Distracting. Too confident. Shedeur was never the problem. He's the mirror. He's forced the Browns and the league to look at the ways they reward compliance over competence, silence over strength, familiarity over fairness. And now that he's spoken up, the league has to listen. Because you can't spin your way out of a culture that's been caught on tape. So here's what's next. The Browns either step into the truth and start Shedeur, or they double down on a broken system and watch the consequences unfold in real time. There's no more middle ground. No more development excuses. No more brushing past his name in interviews. Everyone sees the game now, and it's not being played on the field. In case, Shedeur has shifted the conversation not just for himself, but for every young player who's ever been told to wait their turn while less qualified guys get handed the spotlight. He spoke up. He stood firm. And in doing so, he broke through a wall of silence that was never about development. It was about control. The Browns might still be pretending this is all under control, but the truth is out, and there's no PR strategy slick enough to undo what's already unraveling. The footage of Shedeur Sanders confronting Kevin Stefanski wasn't a blip, it was a spotlight. And now, every move the organization makes is under a microscope. Let's not sugarcoat this. The Browns are running out of excuses and fast. They've burned through the rookie learning curve narrative. They've exhausted the development process talking point. And after 9 games of poor offensive production under Dillon Gabriel, it's clear the so-called plan isn't working. What's left? Silence, and silence has officially turned into guilt. And while the Browns scramble to manage optics, Shedeur is still showing up. Still putting in the work. Still keeping his head down publicly, even though he has every right to speak out. That's the part that stings the most. The maturity, the patience, the professionalism. He's doing the job they should be doing, managing pressure, holding accountability, and staying focused on football. Meanwhile, Gabriel keeps getting the start despite stats that wouldn't justify a backup role on most teams. The favoritism is so blatant, it's practically its own storyline at this point. And the more Gabriel underperforms, the worse it looks, not just for him but for Stefanski and the entire front office enabling it. You don't have to be a scout to see what's happening. The locker room feels it. The fans know it. The tape doesn't lie. And neither does the silence. Every week that goes by without Shedeur taking a snap is one more week of evidence that this isn't about merit. It's about management covering its tracks. And that's where things are about to break. Because once a team stops believing in the fairness of the system, when players know talent isn't the real currency, trust erodes. Fast. And when trust is gone, it's only a matter of time before everything else goes with it. The Browns can feel that weight now. That's why they're tightening the screws behind the scenes, keeping things vague, avoiding names in the media. But none of it is working. Because Shedeur Sanders, with nothing but poise and presence, just forced $1 billion franchise to answer for how it handles power, image, and talent. And that's not just a quarterback controversy. That's a reckoning. So tell us what you think. Should Shedeur stay and make Cleveland face the music? Or take the mic, and his future, somewhere that respects him? Hit the comments. Like if you're done with politics over performance. And subscribe, we'll be here tracking every twist in the fallout. Because this isn't just about one practice or one player. This is about what happens when a system tries to silence someone, and fails.